so people can learn from the wisdom Patrick has to share with us. Patrick is not only a father of 4, he's also a certified postpartum doula and a childbirth educator, and he's made it his mission to educate and empower men to better understand themselves, to support their pregnant partners, and to care for their babies in the newborn stage and beyond. So Patrick, we are very grateful that you are here to join us today. And with that, I will pass the mic over to you.
Wow, I want to thank you for that introduction there, Michelle. Once again, my name is Patrick Hutchins. That picture you see there, that is me and my grandson. So that is my buddy right there. Yeah, he brings a smile to my face every time. Listen, you guys could have been anywhere during this time in the world, but you chose to spend it here with me and with us, and I appreciate that. I want to take you guys on a little journey with me, if you will. We're going to talk about engaging fathers and some of the important stuff. So I'm going to do a little bit of history and things like that. So I want to jump right into this. When we do, this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's from Denzel Washington. It says, "The strongest, toughest men all have compassion. They're not heartless and cold. You have to be man enough to have compassion and to care about people and about your children." The reason that I love this quote right here is because as a single father, when I went through what I had to go through with the DES system when it came to my children, I didn't feel valued. But more than that, I felt stereotyped because they may have seen me as that big, strong, intimidating individual and may have thought that I was cold, I was heartless. But that wasn't the case. Sometimes as we enter situations and allow our biases to dictate our actions or lack thereof, as caseworkers, we often focus on who we are there to help, right? So which is the mom. And we don't necessarily pay attention to who is not there. Now, I want to ask you guys this. So how often have you met with a family, a mother or a client, and you suspected that there was a male figure living there or frequently visiting? And if you guys can do, give me a show of hands of how many have kind of ran into that situation or did that. And I can't really see the whole screen. Michelle, I'm gonna ask you to help me out with this. If we could pick one person out of that, because I have a question for you. If you ran into that situation, what did you do? So if you could share with us what you did.
The hands that were up have gone down, so I would invite the participant to unmute and just share out with us.
Yeah, if not, you can use, I think they have the emoji hand signals, and then this way you guys can kind of keep them up, because I have another part to that question as well.
I can share one. This is Claire McGuire.
Okay.
When I was in investigations quite a few years ago, no, I'm sorry, I was an ongoing worker. And I was coming to the mom's house and trying to reunify her children with her. And she showed me around her house, and I saw like men's deodorant and a body spray and some other things, but no clothes. And she said that she just likes the smell of it and that she uses them sometimes. And we kept getting reports that she was pregnant, and she kept denying that she was pregnant. And 2 months later, she ended up having a baby. And wow. I was like, why didn't you just tell us, so that we can talk with this dad? And I think she was just afraid that we were going to remove that child. But I thought, I guess I should have asked more questions at the time when I saw the stuff in the bathroom. Yeah, I just felt like I was a little upset with myself, but I was also upset with her for not sharing that information.
Okay, and that's perfect. See, because that leads me into my next question I would like to pose to everyone there. So with that being said, and knowing that, what did your procedures or guidelines encourage you to do in that situation? So let's say the same thing that Claire just said, that I know how she felt afterwards, but what did your policies and procedures encourage you to do if you see this scenario or this situation? So if we have any more volunteers with a hand up, or anyone who wants to just jump in.
by trying to reach out to the father and engage him to see if he wants to come in and be a part of what's going on. That's what I normally would do.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this real quick, William. Is that what your procedures dictate for you to do?
Yes, sir. To reach out to all parties of the family, and hopefully they respond via text, email, phone call, and sometimes they do not.
Okay, interesting. Well, I definitely appreciate that, because that's what we're looking for here. That would be signs of the engagement. So now what I want to do here is that kind of give you guys a little bit of background, if you will, on what brought me here to do this. So I was a single parent. I found myself being divorced. We got joint custody, but I found myself actually having the kids and raising them. When I needed help, I decided to, well, here's the thing. I was paying child support. So they were charging me child support, but I had my kids full time. So I said that I was going to go and fight for this to let them know. I made a phone call to DES and they told me to say, well, hey, it's relatively simple. If you just kind of bring proof that you have the kids, the school records and everything else, bring that information, and then we'll be able to review the case and do the investigation, and then we'll be able to get it straightened out. So when I went down there to present everything to them, I got no results whatsoever. It felt like, this is once again why I love this quote by Denzel Washington, because when I walked in, it felt like I was stereotyped as, they didn't value me. So they didn't see me. They just saw me as money, as a provider. And they didn't value me as a father. They didn't care about my opinion. They didn't offer any help whatsoever. And then when I brought them all of the information, they just told me that that really didn't amount to anything. So it didn't really help me out. But like I tell the fathers that I help, so I kind of tell them that it's not, you know, I wasn't in a situation as to where my kids were taken from me. But what they did do was that they made it difficult for me to then take care of my kids. And so this is why when I talk with some of the fathers, they share a couple of things with me, right? So when we share with the fathers, they like to talk about their involvement, like the father's involvement in any of these systems and stuff that we have, right? So some of the fathers that I work with, we're dealing with child support, and we're dealing with also the issues of the mothers relocating, right? So this is one of the things that they said: the mothers relocate, take the kids from them. I don't have any say in it. So once again, I feel helpless. Not viewing the father as a viable option for replacement or reunification when it comes to their children. That's another big issue and stuff. But what all this does, it leads to a couple of things here, and we'll get into that. So now the fathers that I've spoken with and are helping, all of them say that the system has beaten them down, and it does not recognize or acknowledge any of their efforts to get involved in their children's lives. And if the mothers decide that they're not worthy as far as the fathers are concerned, for whatever reason, the system believes her pretty much about 9 times out of 10, right? So the system is always going to believe the mother over the father. One of the things that we also talk about here is that when we're talking about getting into this system, right? In the 1990s, the idea of restricting access to the then program called AFDC, so that was the Aid to Family and Dependent with Dependent Children. They restricted the access to that, and it was meant to punish the non-custodial parent, which is 9 times out of 10 going to be the father. Okay. Now I can tell you that this started way back before that. So in 1986, CBS ran a special report, and it was entitled "The Vanishing Family: Crisis in Black America." In there, they talked about unemployment rates, and then they talked about the poverty levels and stuff. And then they talked about welfare and how it was introduced into this scenario, in this situation. They interviewed families to see how the welfare was working. They interviewed one father, or one male, Now, the individual that they chose to interview, he had multiple children. And so when they asked him in regards to welfare, his response was, hey, let welfare raise them. You know, I'm going to continue to have these. And then they asked him, well, do you intend to stop? No, he said, I'm going to continue to have children by different women, but he's okay with having welfare raise them. Okay. So from that interview, that outraged white America. The results of it is that you have this is where you come up with the term deadbeat dads. So this is where deadbeat dads originated. But what it did more than that is that it introduced or it forced Congress to then create a law, and it's called the Bradley Amendment. And you can check that out, and I can give you some more information on it if you really want to read about it. But it forced them to do that. And with that, what it did once again is made it more difficult for the families to receive access. But what it did more than that is for any father who was trying to take care of their kid, it labeled them as being a deadbeat dad. And so which means the system wasn't set up to help them in any way, shape, or form, or to have them try then to, get involved in their children's lives and anything towards that nature. So I think I might be a little bit ahead of time on here, Michelle. Let me know if I am. So once again, here are the things that we were talking about as far as sharing the concerns with the father. So dealing with the child support and the mother's rights to relocate the child without father's consent. Once again, when I deal with the fathers, that's a big issue there. But I let them know that if we do the history of it, it all boils down to being stereotyped. Like I said, when I had to deal with the system, they didn't see me as a father. They just saw me as the individual who, was responsible for repaying what they were taking care of the mother for. And that's it. When I went to go see him, I could express myself. There was no concern or anything of that nature. The young man that I'm working with here, he did the same thing. He was in his kid's life and he spent time with his child. And he was a father, but because of a disagreement, and now I don't know what the extent of it because they get one side, but because of a disagreement, she decided to move, but not just move, but to relocate to a completely different state. And so now where does that leave him? Because his kid was used to waking up and him being a part of his life, and now that's taken away. The other one that's really important is not viewing the father as a viable option for placement and reunification of the child. We're dealing with the DCS systems and everything else like that. Sometimes we get to where we have the fathers and we scrutinize the fathers for everything that they've done. But sometimes they are the best options. Sometimes we do, once again, do the stereotypes, and we allow our biases to get and to interfere with maybe what the common sense would have us do, and say that, yes, he may have this and this may be going on, but if we work with him, maybe we can help him and maybe we can get him to the place, or maybe it's just that we just need to talk to him. Sometimes that's the biggest thing, is that we need to find out his story. And I know that's the reason as to why we're here now, is to kind of show what we're talking about and then getting fathers involved. So what I would like to do is that we're going to kind of go into our first breakout session here, if you will. So right here, you see it, but I'll read through it real quick. So states can use the federal, TANF, and state MOE monies to meet any of the 4 purposes set out in the 1996 Welfare Reform Act. That was administered by the Clinton administration and stuff. So that is what, once again, the AFDC is turned into. So these are the 4 purposes. Now, I know with your organizations, these may have changed, right? So they may not be under the same name, but they still should be somewhat under the same premise. Now, what I want you to do is that, this is the question, is that which one of these purposes or programs does your organization focus or place emphasis on most? And I want you to consider the following while you're discussing this, right? Does it include provisions for dad's involvement? If so, discuss what they are and how they're implemented. Would you consider it a non-threatening procedure for a non-custodial father parent? So this goes back to what Claire was talking about when she said that she noticed all of this, but sometimes the family is afraid to involve the father because it may be ramifications because of the programs they're involved in. So think about that. And then lastly, what opportunities for reform, knowing your system, knowing your organization, for including acknowledging fathers, do you see in your current purposes or policies? And then I'll meet you guys on the other side, all right?
Excellent, thank you. And if you all look at the chat, there is a link. If you click that link, you'll be able to see this breakout question in your breakout space. So be sure to click that, and I'm going to open up the breakout rooms right now. We'll see you back in 15.
All right, you guys. So I was able to kind of, get my fly on the wall and kind of ear hustle on a couple of the breakout sessions and stuff. I heard some really good things, but I did hear that I guess one of the biggest concerns, what I love that you guys were thinking about, is that question number 2. Would you consider what you guys do a non-threatening procedure for the non-custodial parent / the father? So that kind of was, to me, that opened up, because once again, as I'm doing this, as I thought about this question, I wanted to see, now I understand that we're in the process of now understanding that we need to get the fathers involved. So I just wanted to see what, kind of procedures and if you guys had set aside, and if you did have something that was set aside where you were specific or paid attention to the fathers. And I'm seeing that maybe a lot of you guys do have that. I just want to touch on something real quick before we move on, because when I was ear hustling, I heard something that was amazing, and I just want to point it out. And if you don't mind, I'll get into that, the postpartum aspect. And if you don't mind, Concepcion, I would love for you to touch on, I heard you say something that was amazing to me, when you say with your parents and your families that you have, that even if the father's not there, you ask for a picture. And so if you don't mind just kind of elaborating on that a little bit, why do you guys do that?
Well, the history program is, we work with the family. So it's a whole family. It's not only the mom or the dad. We encourage them, yes, the whole family. And we do know that the child has both mom and dad. And yes, the way that they do it in the classroom is so they could feel that is their place, and if they feel lonely, sad, they know to see the family there. And sometimes they do have something that they keep in their little cubby, if it's something from the mom or dad, and they keep it there. Yes, that they do in the classroom.
So
It's to feel secure.
okay. And as I was listening to her explain that in the group, it just made so much sense to me, like the simplest things, right? So let's say if I'm a single dad and I come pick my kid up and I go into the school and I see a picture of me, in the school as the, the custodial, if you will, the responsible parent, I can pick my kid up. It's been many times where I've had fathers and they simply, they may even go to the school to pick their kids up, and they're met with resistance because the school has never seen them. Mm-hmm. And so even if it's the first time coming to pick the kid up, now I have to go through a whole security check and I have to do all of this stuff. And then all the while, as the father, I'm thinking, well, how many moms have to go through this? Right. And my kid knows me, so they're going to see me and run up to me and the rest of the stuff. But it's still like, the fathers feel like they're being left out on a lot of it. And a lot of it is really simple. And all it is just including them right back into the mix, right? Just bringing them right back into the fold. And it's as simple as what Concepcion does with their organization. Something as simple as adding a photo. And I know she said in the group, she said that they tell the parents, whether it's a group photo or not, just bring us a photo, so.
Even though we have two separate ones.
See, there you go. So it doesn't have to be the Brady Bunch family thing. It could be just dad there by himself. Mm-hmm. But something that small goes a long way when you talk about the fathers and stuff and fatherhood involvement. another one that, if I have time here, another one that I wanted to speak on here real quick. It was in the same group, and this one was by Claire, and it was something that they were. I know you guys were speaking about. I think she's with DCS or was with DCS, but they were talking about their procedures and stuff. As far as she said, their focus is on assisting families in need so children can be cared for. But someone had asked her, would you consider that program a non-threatening procedure for non-custodial parents once again? And Claire, if you wouldn't mind touching on what you were saying, because what got me about what you were saying real quick is that when you were talking about as far as the confusion with the non-custodial parent, I think you were talking about how maybe if we give procedures to the mom and tell her something that the non-custodial or the father who may even be in the picture may come in and may be confused, and that confusion with him not knowing what the actual policies and procedures are could lead to something different. So I don't know if I paraphrased that right with you. I was just kind of ear hustling, but if you can remember what you were saying, if you could kind of touch on that a little bit before we move to this next one, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I think that you did pretty much summarize it. I was sort of also associating it to, you know, when we knock on the door and we're trying to offer services and supports to the family. First of all, it can be scary. I mean, a lot of times the community does have an idea that CPS or DCS is threatening in general. So any program or service that we offer or suggest or put it or implement with the family can be seen as threatening for the entire family, let alone a father who, or an absent parent who isn't in the home, might be confused about why they're going to be doing that, or even what's the purpose of the service, or you know, I don't know that I really want to say procedures, but like the purpose of the programs that we're trying to have the family participate with.
Okay. And once again, thank you for that, because like I said, I mean, it caught my attention because just like I said, from my story, that's kind of like how I felt. It was like all the services and everything were being given to her, but I was the one with the kids and taking care of them. And so when the information got back to me, it sort of vilified me, instead of saying that we have these programs or procedures that we can help you with. It sort of it didn't make me feel as if this system was friendly or non-threatening to me. So I appreciate that, just for the clarity and stuff, and then seeing it from your perspective and from you know, from someone who's in there. So definitely appreciate that. So we're going to move on, and I want to thank everybody that kind of participated in that. Now, with this one here, there was a study that was done. It was done in the Journal of Marriage and Family. So I don't know how many people actually read that or aware of that, but the title of it was "A Non-Residential Father, Fathers and Children's Well-Being, a Meta-Analysis." And it was written by Paul Amata and Joan Gilbert. Now, in that, they discuss the role of the non-residential father and whether he has a role to play in the child's life. So they go on to state that their studies show that non-residential fathers have little to no impact on the children's lives emotionally, academically, or socially. But what they do place emphasis on is their statistics supporting increased child support and efforts to enforce and implement stricter laws. Now, the point of this article was to show weak evidence of visitation and strong evidence that financial contributions outweigh the benefits of having a father involved. This goes back to, once again, when I was telling you, I was talking to the father, and he was saying about his child support and the mother then leaving the state with his child. That was one of the things that I had to deal with me paying the child support, because here's the situation that they put me in. I am the sole proprietor or provider for my kids. And I have to go back and forth to work. I'm already paying child support for them, but now I have child support in arrears. So they're garnishing my wages. I'm still trying to make it. So despite all of that, and I'm still trying to raise my kids, I still have to maneuver around town, if you will, knowing that because of these laws and stuff, and because of this type of ideology, that I could possibly be pulled over at any minute. And then if I get pulled over and I have back child support, then I could be arrested because of the stricter laws that they put in place, because of the fact that the ideology is more focused on financial as opposed to me actually donating or giving my time to my child. I could wind up in jail. And so then if I wind up in jail, I'm already taking care of kids who the mother has said, I'll let you raise them. So as you would have that stereo deadbeat dad, I'm not saying she was a deadbeat mom, but we had made the agreement that she wasn't ready to raise the kids. But now that didn't stop the courts from charging me or having me pay her child support. So I always had to ride around town and do everything that I could under the auspices that I could possibly be pulled over. And then if I get pulled over, then I get removed from my kids. So it's not like my kids being removed from me. This portion of the system sets it up to where I'm removed from my kids. And then this way, it destroys the bond that I have. It puts me in a situation as to where if I can't get bailed out, then I have to stay there for I don't know how long. But now I'm being punished. And then what you have to understand is that if we look at the economical aspect of it from our targeted audience, we have gentlemen out here, we have fathers out here working two jobs maybe, and it's still not enough to keep them above the poverty level. And so now you're working and you have to pay child support, then you have to pay back child support, and then you have to provide for yourself and your kids when they come visit you. So it makes it kind of difficult and it makes it kind of tough for that father. And then you add on the extra added weight of I could possibly go to jail. So I'm doing everything that I could do to do right by my kids, but this system is still holding something over me, which makes it, I have to move a little bit different, if you will. So
Chip, we have a question in the chat. Leanna's asking, did the courts give you an option to go back and revise the child support case?
No, they did not. I wish they would have given me that option. They didn't. I had the worst experience. I had the worst experience with it. It just seemed like everything that I tried to do, I literally went back, and I'll tell you the story of this real quick. I literally went back to the courts. I filed the paperwork. I had a court date. I went to the Mesa court. I went to the court that I was assigned to. My name wasn't on the docket. They sent me back to information. I went to information. They said that we didn't have it. And there was nothing registered. I showed them and I still have this paperwork. And I showed them my paperwork where I paid for everything. And they told me, well, somebody dropped the ball and they didn't register it. But then they told me that I would have to go back and pay for everything again, and then do it again, and then come back to the courts. So they wouldn't even acknowledge the fact that someone dropped the ball there. It was still like, listen, it did not matter what I tried to do to help as far as me getting custody of my kids. So yeah, I tried everything I could. I did that. I even went to the mom and discussed it with her, but you know, we're not talking about that. So, but I tried to do everything that I could. But like I tell the fathers that I'm dealing with, the difference was that my kids weren't in jeopardy of being taken. So I had to it was just my money. You know, it still affected me in that way, in ways that affects them as well. But I never had to worry about that. I never had to worry about that. But I did have to fight the system. And I just saw that the system just didn't show any care, any remorse for the father whatsoever. And I didn't get it cleared until 2013, actually. And my kids are older. So I didn't get it cleared until 2013. So let's move on, if we will. So what we do here is that, so we're gonna kind of like fast forward, right? And so when we're doing it, there's another article that was written in, and it's known, the article is titled Effect of Fatherhood Involvement, a summary of the research evidence. In that, they discuss the benefits of involvement from an early stage. So I'll read some of this right here. So, and you can read along with it. I may not touch on everything, but it says it's clear that the research that fatherhood involvement has enormous implications for men on their own path to adult development. And that's something that I can vouch to as well. It helps as far as with the wives. It also helps as far as when you're co-parenting, as far as the relationship is concerned. But most importantly, you're talking about it helps the children in the terms of social, emotional, and cognitive development. Now, the studies show, or this research showed, that cognitive developed infants of highly involved fathers are more cognitively competent at 6 months old and score higher on the Bradley scale of infant development. By 1 year, higher cognitive functions and better problem solvings as a toddler. And they have higher IQs by the age of 3. School-age children often are involved or with involved fathers. Wait, I do apologize, you guys, but I was kind of reading this, but the pictures are in the way. So I got cut off there. So when they're involved, they become better academically, better achievers. They get A's quantitatively, and they have better quantitative and verbal skills. They are usually like higher grade point average and receive superior grades, and they usually test at a grade higher. And it also shows that, once again, when the father is involved, they more than likely live in a cognitively stimulating home. The best thing about it is that they are also less likely to fail a grade, have poor attendance, or have behavioral problems at school. Now, I make this distinction because the current system's philosophy or ideology is more in tune with the first article that we read. But yet, like, here we are, right? Discussing fatherhood engagement and fatherhood involvement. So with that being said, I want to kind of bring us into our second breakout. And this one right here, just want to, with what we read here and what you guys know, because once again, these are facts that are statistics that are out there. We all know that when fathers are involved, the kids, do better. So now, why do you think that kids excel when fathers are involved? And once again, these are a couple of things that I want you to take into consideration while you're discussing this, is that what level was your father involved? And if you didn't have a father, who was your father figure? Who was your role model? And does money, that child support that we discussed, does that make up for time spent? Can we substitute time spent with the child like the old ideology and then say, yeah, this money does help? So I'll let you guys go ahead on and kind of chop it up and then discuss that. And once again, I'll meet you on the other side.
Yes, just like before, if you click the link in the chat, you'll have access to this question in your breakout space. They are 10 minutes this time with a new group, and I'm going to open them now. Patrick, so we can debrief a little bit.
Okay. So you guys let me know what you think about this. I was just talking with Roderick. We were just a little bit ahead of it, but we were kind of talking about, the fatherhood involvement and stuff. And sometimes when the father is not there, and then how do we engage him if he's there for whatever reason? And we'll touch a little bit more on that later on. But right now, somebody let me know in their breakout session what you guys were talking about. I know I was in one for a brief second, and I like to pick on the people that I was in there with. So if I could, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but Nisbet, I was in there with her, and she was telling me about the influence that her father had. Now, her parents have always been together, so she can give her a real good perspective on what her father being involved, what that did for her. So if you could jump in, if you don't mind sharing, I would love to have the people here.
Yeah, no problem. So what I was explaining was that my dad's always been involved, always been the provider, and what it influenced me now as an adult, that I've seen is that how it affected my relationships with my partners and relationships in connection to like dating, and also the example that was set with his marriage with my mom and how to treat um your partner and that attachment styles and everything like that. So that was a huge influence on me. And then another thing we discussed was that culture is a big influence as well, because I come from a traditional Mexican family household where mom is typically the one that's at home taking care of kids while dad's providing, and mom is the one that's more emotionally involved, and dad's just like, I'm breadwinner, you handle that. And so I feel like that would be something like a obstacle as we meet with families, because I'm doing home visitation and direct support. That might be something difficult to engage in if roles are set that way culturally, to kind of like evolve from that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I love the cultural aspect that you added in there. Real quick, I saw that Leanna had her hand up, so jump in.
So we had a really good discussion, so I wanted to share with everybody. So all of us came from different backgrounds. Some of us had both parents, some of us did not. So for my unique situation, I was raised with both parents there the entire time. And I had some issues in my teen years that made not so good choices. So fast forward to me now as a mom with a teenager. She lost her father 6 years ago. So she does not have the opportunity to have him involved in her life right now. And she is now a teenager, gets to make her own teenage decisions, and she's doing extremely well. So she's the polar opposite of me. So I just, in conclusion of what well, what I was back then, I should say. So kind of what we were talking about is it really doesn't matter, I guess, to kind of, piggyback off of what was said earlier. It doesn't really matter like both families involved or both parents involved. It matters what resources the family has and what supportive roles that family has. And we were talking about father figures and having that figure in that child's life to show them that aspect of the male role in a child's life is important too. So just wanted to share that.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I'm sure that discussion was amazing. I want to touch on something real quick that Nisbet said, if I can. When she was talking about culture and growing up in a traditional Mexican family. My dad's from Panama. And so being Afro-Latino in South Central Los Angeles in the late 80s and early 90s was confusing, to say the least, because culturally, I get the food. I get it. We had it. I cook it. I love it. But the traditions that he brought with him and his ways from Panama didn't fit with growing up in South Central Los Angeles. So it was kind of confusing for us because his tradition didn't fit what normal African-American children were going through. So we identified, and I don't want to say, because I don't want to make it seem like it's a bad thing, but we identified strangely enough with the Hispanic community and culture than we did with the African-American culture. Now, don't get me wrong, we still got down with the ribs and the collard greens and everything else. So we still did all that. We still had our fun with our traditions and everything else from my mom's side. But when it came to my dad, we, learned things like the yucca root, understanding that, understanding, tortillas. For the longest, we were like the old people in the Western where you see them eating beans out of a plate and they all had that flat tortilla shell and they wipe it up and they eat like, so we didn't know. We just thought it was, we ate tortilla shells with everything for breakfast and but we just thought it was, normal. Didn't understand it until we got away from it. But it's something that my kids are aware of, but now I can teach them the reason as to why we do it and the culture behind it. So I definitely just wanted to put that in there because I identify with it. And a lot of times, once again, it goes to what I was talking about first, as far as stereotyping. Not many people can see me and see that I'm Afro-Latino. And so sometimes they just offer me things because I'm Black, you know, and it doesn't always fit, you know, but then a lot of times I don't want to explain myself either, you know. And so that goes to, once again, engaging fathers and understanding who they are and see me for who I am, right? Because I get frustrated because then I have to explain this to people, and then people look at me and go, okay, now I can see it a little bit, but do you do this and do you do that? But no, it's, you know, it's still just a little bit different. Christina, jump in here.
We talked in our group about the father's involvement and how the mother it either encourages it or is kind of like the gatekeeper to father's involvement. So I had shared that, like in my home growing up, I had a dad who, my parents were always married. They're still married. He was, you know, very involved. But then in my own home, when I had my children, I had to like bring my kids and their dad together for him to be a parent. Do you know what I mean? Like, kind of, because he grew up in something different in his household. So his dad wasn't as involved in his life. He was still a nuclear family, but just not as involved. And so over time, once we got divorced, I was no longer the one to kind of push them together. So encouraging my kids to go still spend time with their dad. But they're like, he's just not fun like that. And, you know, so,
No, I know,
you know, I could have been the one that said like, no, you know, you don't have to go over there or whatever, but I kind of encouraged it. But over the years, I've seen how, you know, my older one, how she had a little bit closer bond with her dad because she had more time of him being involved. And then my younger one, she's not as connected with him and doesn't really want to see him because she doesn't see the effort he puts forth, because over time it's waned. So I think it does kind of matter how the mom is, because I have some of my clients that they're like the gatekeeper. They don't want the dad to come around, and that I only know their side of the story. So I don't know if that's a good thing or if it's that she's keeping away something that could be positive for the child.
Well, we'll address that in the next slide. And I want to thank you for that, because that was an amazing segue to it. But before we do that, I want to hear from Lorenzo. Lorenzo, what say you?
Me, well, there's a lot of things when the father is involved, a lot of research that has come up. With the research, it shows that when, and this has to be the biological dad, even if they have a father figure there, if it's not the biological dad, kids that grow up, their chances of being incarcerated go up over 70%. Girls growing up without their biological father having involvement, the rates that they're gonna wind up in a relationship where there's gonna be abuse because they don't have a dad to teach them how they need to be loved, how they're gonna get that compassion. And they're just looking for whatever love they can find, especially if it's like with the mom that's going through from relationship to relationship or is in an abusive relationship. They're going to grow up to think that that's normal. If it's a male growing up, they're going to think, well, he's treating my mom like that, and they're going to think that that's normal. That's why they do need the biological dad there. It makes a very big difference. But a lot of times there is nurture versus nature, where it comes in, and sometimes you do get a good dad that's gonna come in and be a good father figure. Who's gonna teach them that the rights from wrongs. However, there's just too many factors on that. I grew up with both my mom and my dad. They were together until recently. My dad passed away 2.5 years ago. It's hard without him. Even at my age, I'm 37 years old. It's hard not to have him, to have his guidance. A father is very important, is just as important as a mom. With the way that the system works right now, it's very difficult. I'm going through a divorce. I'm trying to keep my child because she's in an abusive relationship. And it's difficult for me to go through all of this. My emotions do get impact. I know he feels my stress sometimes. I don't want him to feel my stress, but those are things that we need to go through. With everything that's going on in the world with, hey, we need to make this inclusive and we need to make that inclusive. One thing that I don't hear about is, where's the inclusiveness of a father teaching a boy how to be a man? And I don't see that anywhere. I see about men being women, women being men, and raising kids and not using certain languages. Well, my First Amendment with my son is to be able to teach him my religion, and hopefully it'll be inclusive later on, where my son can grow up to say it proudly, I'm a man, and not have to go on with the sins and have to cooperate with somebody else's delusion when someone else says that there's something other than they're not. And it's okay to accept those people as a person, but you don't need to go on with the delusion and helping them go further into their gender dysphoria or gender or whatever it is that they're going through. I will not teach my son to go along with their lives. He's going to grow up to be a good, righteous man.
And I really appreciate that, Lorenzo, your perspective on it and stuff. When we're talking about the involvement and stuff, once again, we have different spectrums on it. This is why it is important, because once again, we have the fathers and they have their perspectives and stuff, and these are their kids. There are different ways of handling things. We see it from all different perspectives, and we want to make sure that, once again, like you said, the biggest thing that you said that I really agree with is when you said it needs to be inclusive. When can we include the fathers into this and stuff? And that's what we're here for today, right? We're here today to try and figure out what can we do to get them included and stuff. I'm going to move on because we're due to time. We're going to move on to the next slide, because I want you guys to kind of check this scenario out here real quick. You got to love the picture of that car too, right? So look at it this way. So let's say we have a male that's in the living room. He's laying on the couch watching TV. So outside, you notice this is going to be our way to engage. So we're going to be talking about how then can we start to engage fathers. So you look outside and you see that 67 Chevy long block, and it's been in the yard for a while. But it seems like every time you come by, right, there's been some type of work done on it. Now, of course, we're trained to observe, right? So you politely asked him, hey, is that a 67 Chevy in the yard? And even if he gives you the proverbial head nod or the yes or yeah, you've engaged him, right? Now, from there, it's up to you to build that connection. And what do I mean by that? That means that now that you've engaged him, you see that once again, he's into the 65 Chevy or the 67 Chevy that's in the yard. But through some probing through the mom, sharing information about him, about his love for that, right? Then you can then go back, but now the rest of it is up to you, because now you created that, you've engaged him. But now the rest of it is up to you. And what do? Then that means that you have to go learn, if you don't already know about a 67 Chevy long block, if you don't know about it, they're amazing cars, but let's say you don't know about it, then this would be your opportunity to do some research on it. You don't have to know everything about it. And I'm not telling you to go get the specs on it and be able to break the engine down. No, but once again, through probing and questioning the mom, that this is what he does. This is where he spends the majority of his time, fixing on this car, tinkering with this car, So now that you know this, you can then start engaging him a little bit more. You can start then asking him questions and stuff. Then you can start including him in the discussion regarding the health care and well-being of the children. One of the things that we like to do is that we can offer him the resources that we were just speaking about. Now, but we want to offer him the resources that best match his personality. Once again, that's based off of what mom shares with you. We want to include organizations such as Think Outside of the Box, maybe some grassroots organizations. So that's a great one, the grassroots organizations. Some culturally sensitive, appropriate services. And when we're talking about that, what we're talking about is that the services are being offered by someone who looks like me, right? And so then this way I can feel comfortable in confining with that person. Sometimes when we go through this and we offer these services, sometimes the services don't match the individual. And they may be good services, but they don't necessarily match the individual all the time. So like I was saying, the best results or the best resources that we have is going to be the mom. So through her, you can find out things about the father, such as, but not limited to, his hobbies, ambitions, his stressors, his involvement, and his dislikes. Okay. Now, what we do is that we have the mother, or you can suggest, one of the suggestions is that have the mother keep what we call a time diary. Okay. And in that time diary is just, she's going to document every time he's involved, no matter how short, no matter what it is, right? From mealtime to homework, physical play, rough house, leisure time. For me, you would have found me with my daughter, our leisure time was me laying on the couch watching the football game, but she's laying on my chest, but that's our leisure time. So that was my time with her. But once again, have the mother get involved with that and have her gather that information for you. And then once she has all of that information, a couple of other things that we do is that we meet the men where they're at. And what we mean by that is that we put them in a non-threatening environment, which leads to more open and honest dialogue. I often joke when I'm out in public and I talk to people about this is that if you play ball, I'm out there playing ball with you. If you're on that golf course, I'm there with you. I may not a golf all that great, but I'm there with you. But we want to be or put them in a situation, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the athletic things or any of that nature. We're not talking about going out drinking and doing all the rest of this stuff. We want to put them in a comfortable situation, which means that you guys know just from your experience doing this, that it's difficult for fathers to come meet in an environment where you have mothers come to, where it's structured, where we're sitting in a conference room and we're all around a table. A lot of men don't open up in that situation. So what we're saying is just think outside of the box and meet them where they're at and make them comfortable. The other one is that we give them the options and allow them to choose which services they want to explore, not what they're told they need. This goes back to when I was talking about at first the resources and the grassroots and the culturally appropriate. A lot of times when we deal with these systems such as DCS and DES and all the rest of these other systems that are here to help us, they have their set programs and their set organizations or nonprofit organizations that they choose to help or choose to refer you to. But let's say if that is, they're not comfortable there, but they are comfortable with this one that's a grassroots organization that you may not as an organization recognize, but they offer the same thing. See, and if he wants to go over here and he chooses this, then as long as it meets the standards in which he's required to have this help, then it should be accepted. Because then that's going to make him want to go more as opposed to something where you're telling him you have to go here and you have to do that. Okay. And then the last one is that this is the one that I like, is that we encourage the discussion of when you do this, I feel. And I'll give you an example of that. So let's say we go back to the scenario of the 67 Chevy, right? And so so the mom says, well, when you spend too much time on that car, you make me feel neglected. And so then that opens him up to then respect her feelings. And then he can come back in and reciprocate, and then they can open discussion. But once again, we don't want it to be all negative. When you feel, or when you do this, I feel this. It can't be negative. You can do this with the kids as well, to open up that dialogue. So we want reaffirmation as well, right? So we want them to reaffirm it. So then in turn, he comes back and says, well, you know, when I see you taking care of our kids, and I see that you have dinner for me after a long day's work, and I come home and I've played with the kids and everything else, and you have the dinner for me, and you know, you don't mind me going out there kind of tinkering on, you know, with the car after I've done all that. You make me feel loved, right? Because you are allowing me to do what I love to do. And so you know, with that being said, we kind of have that all rolled in. We open that up to, once again, it promotes conversation, but it defangs, if you will, sensitive conversations. So with that being said, you guys, I'm going to open up the floor. I think we have a couple of minutes here. I hope what I was talking about today resonated with some of you, and I hope it gave you some insight as to where, when it comes to dads and fathers, and how we may be able to engage them, but how the systems in which we work may have overlooked them. And within the systems in which we work, there are answers to how we can engage the fathers. I know someone asked, but my information will be here, so you guys can get in contact with me. I would definitely love to talk to you in regards to a lot of different things. Before we go, I think I have a couple of minutes. I know someone had asked me a question in regards to my postpartum doula. And I'll answer that. The way I got involved in it real quick was that I went to a CAN meeting in South Phoenix. They were talking about the infantile death rate. And as far as the infantile death rate, they were saying that this is where I got introduced to a doula, and understanding the importance of having a doula within the Black community, within the Black and Brown community, but just for birth workers, period. So as I sat there, they didn't once again mention anything as far as the father was concerned. So I kind of raised my hand, and with me and my partners, and said, well, what about having male doulas? Initially, we were going to call ourselves doulos. So taking the A feminine off of doula, putting the O masculine in, once again, the Spanish, and do it that way. But that didn't turn out to actually work. So we just did Dou-bro'z. So doulas and brothers. So Dou-bro'z. So that's what it came up. But the postpartum aspect, what I do is that I actually took the training, and everything that I do is catered towards fathers. So I help the fathers understand the hormonal changes that we experience from the birth, from the pregnancy to birth cycle. So in order for him to then be a better advocate for the mother, because then if he's okay and he understands what he's going through, then he can identify when she's going through postpartum, and she can go as far as the depression. Us men go through it as well. And I teach them how to identify it in males. But I took the training for the mom, so then this way the father can be a better advocate. So I hope that answered your question, or answered a little bit. Once again, my contact information is in there. You guys can send me an email. I would love to get back in contact with you and talk to you about anything or any questions that you may have in regards to that.
Patrick, we are so appreciative for you and your insight. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everyone who was joining us on our call today. You can see our upcoming father engagement workshops are happening October 18th, January 24th, and March 13th. So please, please come back. Thank you all. Take our survey. It's linked there in the chat. Also, the Dad Together with the Family Involvement Center, and Let's Talk Dads with Southwest Human Development. Great programs. Check them out. Thank you all for being here. Have a great rest of your day.